Hey everybody, it's Tim Hepworth here. We're Thursday Night Live Fly Tying and Fly Fishing Bover Outfitters, and I want to thank you for joining us for another quick tie. We want to thank Rocky Mountain Fly Shop for sponsoring this quick tie and bringing it to you guys today. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this video. It's important for you guys and for us that we know if you're here. Hit that little bell icon. It'll let you know every time we have another video coming out. Tonight we are tying the Mickey Finn classic pattern. We're going to be tying it out of this guy here, which is our Season 5 Episode 16 package, which comes out of our Season 5 kit. If you still want to grab one of these, you can head on over to our website and grab one today. And you can just follow along by watching all the quick ties we put out every week on every pattern that we do. Let's head on over to the vise and get started on this fly. This is a classic hair wing pattern. So it's been a while, I think, since we've done a hair wing. But this is like I said, a more classic old school streamer pattern. Good on both saltwater and freshwater. And yeah, we're gonna take you through it and let you know how to do it. All right, so let's go ahead and get our hook in the vise. We always do this on a longer streamer hook so that we get a little bit more length and space for the silver underbody flash on this fly. I'm gonna be using a dark colored thread today, UTC 140. I'm gonna be using this really dark. It's like a dark brown. A black is just perfect as well, but something dark is what you should be using. Let's go ahead and start our thread just behind the eye. I can snip out my tag end. And then I'm gonna work my thread all the way back to the top of the bend and just cover up all of that, that hook underneath. And also we're laying down a really nice base for the next materials to come, because having a really even underbody is kind of an important part of this fly. Then I'm just gonna spiral this back forward, right up into the back of the head of the fly here. We're gonna grab our first material, which is this kind of circular cylindrical shaped flash or braid. We're gonna take this from just behind the eye all the way back to where we left our thread. This is gonna be our rib. This is what we're gonna bring back up the fly once we get our flash on. So I'm just gonna take a gathering wrap, get the tag in, pinch down, and I'm gonna start this up on the top of the fly, just with nice touching wraps. I'm gonna allow it to start pushing it to the far side of the fly, and by the time I get to the bend, I want it to have pushed it all the way to the underside of the fly, or pretty close to it. And now what I want to do is I want to bring this really evenly all the way back up, making as even as a body as possible. As the next material we're putting over is the flash, and it's a flat material. And as we take this up, it has a tendency of not wanting to lay super even as it is, so we have an advantage by creating the most even underbody that we can. It'll make our lives a little bit easier. So I'm gonna bring this all the way up to where I tied in the last material, and I'm gonna go ahead and grab my flash. Now this is a two-sided flash, so on one side it's silver, on the other side it's gold. Now these specific flashes, when you wrap them, have a huge tendency of separating. So it's actually two pieces of flash put together. And when you wrap it up a flat surface too far and then back like we're going to, sometimes it wants to separate the two pieces. So we gotta be really careful to keep them as in line as possible. So when I go to tie it in, I'm gonna tie it so I can see the gold side. So I wanna be able to see the gold when I lay it here, because then my first wrap is gonna be the silver side as I wrap forward. So I'm gonna lay that right there, tie it in at kind of a little bit of an angle. It's gonna lay however it wants to lay. That's just the way this stuff works. I'm gonna throw in a little half hitch here just to kind of save my work, so I can set that out of the way and I can just work on wrapping this. And then when I fold over the first time, you're gonna see the silver side. That's why we tie it in with the gold side up. Now our first time down the fly, you can use the rotary function as well. I like it, it keeps me a little bit more even because I can just hold an angle. The thing you're gonna have to worry about is your other material at the back might get a little tangled, but for the most part it works pretty good. You can stop it every so often and clean it out of the way. Just keep a nice even touching wraps all the way back. And the key here is when we change angles, sorry, try to get that out of the way, and we come back the other way, material is really just getting in the way the whole time. When I get back to this back portion, I'm gonna take away from the rotary function because I need to maneuver around that hook. You can see it's gonna kind of create some little bumps that look uneven, but what I wanna do is kind of put my finger on, then bring the flash underneath, put my finger on, bring the flash underneath so it doesn't slide up like that. And now we're gonna double back over our work. So This is the one that really counts because this is what you're gonna see. So now nice touching wraps. This should even everything out a lot better. All the way forward. And everything should still be silver. If you're seeing gold at this point, then you gotta backtrack and make sure that the tinsel is coming the right way. Now we're just gonna take this all the way back up to where we originally tied it in. And then we'll bring our rib forward as well. Just be careful to always keep tension on this, because if I let off any tension, all of those wraps are just gonna come undone, and I'm gonna have to redo kind of a huge portion of this. I'm gonna bring that just a little further forward to cover up where I tied in the rib. And then I'm just gonna secure it with a thread wrap behind, thread wrap in front, thread wrap behind, and in front. Once I have that good and secured, I can trim it out. And then I'm gonna lay a few more thread wraps over top of the tie-in point, making sure it's definitely not gonna go anywhere. And then same thing, I'm gonna put a little half hitch in here, just a little overhand knot, set that back out of the way. And now I'm gonna bring our rib material forward. So I'll get this unwound here, and I'm gonna use that rotary function again. So I'm gonna wrap in the opposite direction now. And I like using the rotary function here because I can keep a really consistent distance between my wraps as I come back forward. Not that the fish probably care at all, but it's more aesthetically pleasing. All the way up to my thread. I'm gonna come back and grab my thread, bring it in. Again, capture it, thread wrap behind, thread wrap in front, and repeat. Thread wrap behind, thread wrap in front. And then I can go ahead and trim that out. So, again, I'm gonna take a couple of thread wraps just to make sure I've got that secured in there. It's not gonna go anywhere. Taper down to the eye. And now we're gonna get to work with the bucktail that we have in this fly. So we got two different colors of bucktail. We're gonna be using some yellow and some red. We're gonna tie yellow in twice and red in once. So we're gonna start with the yellow. And guys, we are using a very little amount here. We are not overdoing it with the bucktail at all. Just tying very sparsely tied. So my first little bunch here is gonna be very, very thin. I wanna make sure that I got my tips as matched up as possible. And it's sometimes hard to stack the deer hair. So what I'll do is I'll grab a few tips in my fingers, and I'll lay some more in, and I'll let them slide through until I can kind of stack as evenly as I can get them, those tips. And it's okay if they're not perfectly stacked, because if there's some are a little shorter, that's not the end of the world either. But we do want those to flare up as we tie this in. So I'm gonna trim a little bit of this off because this is excessively long. I basically need a hook shank in length worth of them. So what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna come in here. I'm gonna lay this back so that it's gonna extend just back behind the overall hook shank, like so. I'm gonna switch my hands over here so I can see a measurement. Now I'm just gonna trim this back just behind the eye. I'm gonna tip it down towards the fly. And I'm gonna take a thread wrap up and over. I'm gonna spin my bobbin back towards my fingers so it jumps rearward. And it's important that all this material stays right up on top, okay? So I'm gonna lay some thread wraps down to the eye, back up on the material, give it a decent squeeze, and I'm gonna let it off. Okay, that's our first wing. Next one's gonna be red. And I'm gonna put about the same amount I did there, and then my last yellow is gonna be a little bit more heavy in the hair department. Still not a lot, but heavier than that. So I'm gonna try to grab out of the clumps you have, like so. I'm just gonna grab another clump of the red. And guys, this bucktail isn't an easy material to portion off for you guys. So show a little grace in how it's there. It's pretty easy to get it out and in your hands properly. But again, I'm gonna come here, I'm gonna grab the longest fibers, keep pinching on them, bring a few more in. And I'm just gonna keep doing that till I get a few stacked as close to the tips as possible. A few there, a few more. And if I have any of them that are just way out to lunch, I'm just gonna pull those out. And I'm gonna have a decent stack there. As long as they're pretty close, that's all we're looking for. Like so. Got a couple of long ones still. Pull those out. I'll trim this back a smidge. And same deal, I'm gonna tie it in same length right up on top of the yellow. So I'll lay it on top, make sure it's extending roughly to the same place. Then I'm gonna grab it with my other hand, see my length, trim it back behind the eye, then lay my thread wraps on top. Again, all the hair is right on top of the fly. A few thread wraps back and forward. This is gonna help also build up our head a little bit. And there we go. Okay, so we got yellow, red, and we're gonna go back to yellow one more time. And just a bit heavier on the yellow this time than last time. I always grab off more than I need. I grab a decent clump this time, and as I work with it, it'll thin itself out. This one's actually very stacked already, which is good. So I'll just pull out a few that aren't. Bring them back on. This technique comes from tying with bucktail, because a lot of times it doesn't want to stack in a hair stacker as nice. So you just kind of lay it in your hands and your fingers. Only got one there that's a little long. Like that. And that evens them up pretty good. Now this guy is going to do the exact same thing that the previous ones did. So when I lay it down, I want it to extend just to the edge of there. So I can press on them and kind of see where they're going to come back to just behind the end of the hook, which is perfect. I'll switch my hands over again. I can trim it out like I did before. And then I'm going to take my thread wraps, tip it down towards the eye of the hook. And now I'm going to take thread wraps down to the eye and back up. Oop, that one came out on me. Same thing. Bucktail is very slippery material, so you got to be really cautious when you're working with it. Your thread doesn't move around too much on it. Just make sure that you get the bucktail stacked as perfectly on top of the fly as possible. Make sure it's good and secure. Okay, really like the way that one looks. I'm gonna do a quick whip finish here, and then I'm gonna put a little bit of resin on it. And that'll be the Mickey fin. We want that head to be a decent size, so that's why I brought it back a couple eye lengths behind. And we also want it to have a decent taper, so we want it to be maybe a little bulkier right behind the bucktail, and then it's gonna taper down towards the eye of the hook. So I'm gonna come in here, take a little bit of a UV Solarized bone dry, and all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna touch all the way around on all the thread wraps. I'm gonna keep it back off the hair. All I wanna do is touch the thread wraps. I'm gonna cure that. Now that color is gonna look virtually black. And that is our Mickey fin. So as you strip this through the water, that bucktail is gonna move. It's got a ton of movement back here, and it's gonna bring the wing down, make it a little bit slimmer profile. Overall, super cool fly. If you haven't tried it, I guarantee you that it will give you some success. Don't always get caught up in the big, awesome looking streamers. Come back to some of the classics once in a while and give them a try as well. All right, guys, it's been Tim Hepworth here with Fly Fishing Boat Outfitters and Thursday Night Live Fly Tying. I want to thank you for joining us for another quick tie. Drop a comment if you're in here right now. Let us know you're here. It means a lot to us to know that you're using this as an asset to your fly tying toolbox. All right, guys, until next week, I'll bring you a couple more flies. We'll see you then.
That's the end for you.
No, not the end. It can't be the end. It might be. You might see a prettier face on the next quick tie.
Tim, who's your favorite band?
My favorite band? Well, I don't know. I can't hear anything on this side.
Bye.
Bye.